Kim Jong Il, the architect of North Korea's isolation and survival, Part 1, Early Life of Kim Jong Il. Kim Jong Il's early life unfolded against the backdrop of a rapidly changing world, shaped by the upheavals of war, revolution, and the intense ideological struggle that characterized the mid-20th century. His birth and upbringing have been subjects of both historical inquiry and state propaganda, with conflicting narratives reflecting the stark divide between documented accounts and the mythos constructed by the North Korean regime. These formative years, marked by personal tragedy, displacement, and the shadow of his father's revolutionary ambitions, laid the foundation for his eventual emergence as one of the most enigmatic and controversial leaders in modern history. Birth and disputed origins. The circumstances surrounding Kim Jong-il's birth are clouded by discrepancies between Soviet records and the official North Korean narrative. According to archival documents, Kim was born in 1941 under the name Yuri Kim. This name reflects his family's connection to the Soviet Union during their time in exile, where his father, Kim Il-sung, was a prominent guerrilla leader aligned with communist forces. His birthplace is also contested, with some sources identifying the Vyatsky camp near Khabarovsk and others pointing to the Voroshilov camp near Nikolsk as possible locations. The timing and location of Kim's birth have been debated extensively by historians. Lim Jae-cheon, a prominent scholar on North Korean history, argues that Kim's birthplace was most likely Voroshilov, based on the documented movements of Kim Il-sung, who resided in the area prior to relocating to Vyatsky in July 1942. This conclusion challenges the official North Korean account, which claims that Kim Jong-il was born on February 16, 1942, in a secret military camp on Mount Paektu. The Mount Paektu narrative holds immense symbolic significance in North Korean propaganda. As a revered site in Korean culture and history, the mountain is associated with national pride and resistance against foreign domination. By situating Kim's birth at this sacred location, the regime sought to construct a narrative that tied the Kim family to the very essence of Korean identity. This origin story also positions Kim Jong-il as a natural heir to his father's revolutionary legacy, portraying him as a child born in the crucible of anti-Japanese resistance. Family dynamics and early challenges. Kim Jong-il's parents played pivotal roles in shaping his early life. His father, Kim Il-sung, was already emerging as a central figure in the Korean Communist movement, known for his leadership in guerrilla campaigns against Japanese colonial forces. His mother, Kim Jong-suk, was equally influential, revered for her dedication to the revolutionary cause and her role as a supportive partner to Kim Il-sung. Within the family, Kim Jong-il was affectionately called Yura, a diminutive of his Russian name, while his younger brother, Kim Man-il-inoy, was nicknamed Shura. These names highlight the family's deep ties to the Soviet Union, which provided both refuge and resources during their years in exile. Despite the apparent unity of the family, Kim Jong-il's early life was not without its difficulties. The family's constant movement, dictated by Kim Il-sung's revolutionary activities, created an unstable environment. Additionally, the hardships of exile and the constant threat of Japanese reprisals loomed large over their lives. These challenges, combined with the weight of his father's expectations, would have a profound impact on Kim Jong-il's psyche and worldview. Tragedy struck early in Kim's life with the death of his mother in 1949. Kim Jong-suk reportedly died from complications related to an ectopic pregnancy, leaving a young Kim Jong-il and his siblings without their maternal figure. Her death was a significant loss, depriving the family of a stabilizing presence and forcing Kim Il-sung to balance his revolutionary ambitions with his responsibilities as a father. The absence of his mother likely intensified Kim Jong-il's reliance on his father, deepening his understanding of the burdens and sacrifices associated with leadership. The return to Korea and post-war upheaval. The end of World War II in 1945 marked a seismic shift in the Korean peninsula's history. As Japanese colonial rule collapsed and the region entered a period of profound transformation. For the Kim family, this was both a moment of triumph and a new chapter in their revolutionary journey. Kim Il-sung returned to Pyongyang in September 1945, welcomed as a hero by many Koreans who viewed him as a symbol of liberation. Later that year, Jong Il and the rest of his family followed, traveling aboard a Soviet ship to the port of Sunbong. The family's arrival in Pyongyang marked the beginning of their ascent to power. They settled in a former Japanese officer's mansion, a grand residence that stood in stark contrast to the widespread poverty and devastation experienced by most Koreans in the post-war period. The mansion, complete with a garden and swimming pool, symbolized the privileges that accompanied Kim Il-sung's rising status as a political leader. However, life in Pyongyang was not without its challenges. In 1948, tragedy struck again when Kim Jong-il's younger brother, Kim Man-il, drowned in the pool of their family home. This devastating loss, compounded by the earlier death of his mother, deeply affected the young Kim Jong-il and further shaped his understanding of the fragility of life and the importance of family. A childhood of contrasts, Kim Jong-il's early years were defined by a stark contrast between privilege and hardship. On one hand, he grew up in an environment of relative comfort and influence, shielded from the struggles faced by ordinary Koreans. On the other hand, he experienced significant personal losses and the pressures of being the son of a revolutionary leader. These contradictions shaped his identity, instilling in him a sense of duty to his family's legacy while also fostering a deep understanding of the sacrifices required to maintain power. The interplay of these factors, personal tragedy, political ambition, and the mythology surrounding his birth, served as the foundation for Kim Jong-il's eventual rise to power. His early life was not merely a prelude to his leadership, but a critical period that shaped his character and his approach to governance. As the son of Kim Il-sung, he inherited not only the privileges of his family's status, but also the immense expectations that came with it. Kim Jong-il's childhood offers a window into the complex interplay of history, ideology, and personal experience that defined his life. From his contested origins to his formative years in Pyongyang, his early life reflects the broader dynamics of a nation struggling to redefine itself in the aftermath of colonial rule and war. Part 2: Education and Political Involvement. Kim Jong-il's education and early political activities were pivotal in shaping the leader he would become. His formative years, spent under the shadow of his father Kim Il-sung's growing political dominance, saw him develop not only an understanding of North Korea's ideological framework but also the skills required to navigate its complex political landscape. The interplay of privilege, ideological indoctrination, and early exposure to governance defined this critical period of his life. Early education amid uncertainty. Kim Jong-il's official biography asserts that he completed his general education between September 1950 and August 1960. During this time, he is said to have attended primary school No. 4 and middle school No. 1, later known as Namsan Higher Middle School, in Pyongyang. These institutions were among the most prestigious in North Korea, reserved for the children of the elite. The curriculum emphasized not only academic subjects but also ideological instruction, with a particular focus on loyalty to the Workers' Party of Korea, WPK, and its leadership. The historical context of Kim's early education cannot be ignored. His schooling coincided with the Korean War, 1950 to 1953, a conflict that devastated the peninsula and cemented the division between North and South Korea. The war had a profound impact on North Korean society, and its effects were deeply felt in Pyongyang, which faced extensive bombing campaigns by United Nations forces. During this period, many members of the ruling elite, including Kim Jong-il, were reportedly evacuated to safer locations. Some foreign scholars suggest that Kim spent part of his childhood in the People's Republic of China, where he may have received an education designed to protect him from the dangers of the war. The possibility of Kim being educated in China adds an intriguing dimension to his formative years. If true, this experience would have exposed him to Chinese culture, language, and political ideology, broadening his perspective while also reinforcing the close ties between the Chinese Communist Party and North Korea during this era. This exposure, however, remains a matter of speculation, as official North Korean accounts omit any reference to such an arrangement. Indoctrination and political activities. From a young age, Kim Jong Il was deeply immersed in the ideological tenets of the WPK. His involvement in the Korean Children's Union and later the Democratic Youth League (DYL) provided him with an early platform to engage in political activities. These organizations served as training grounds for future party members, emphasizing Marxist-Leninist principles, jush, self-reliance, and unwavering loyalty to the Kim family. In September 1957, Kim was appointed vice chairman of his middle school's DYL branch. While the chairmanship of the branch was traditionally reserved for a teacher, Kim's position as vice chairman was a significant acknowledgement of his political potential. During this period, he reportedly organized study groups focused on Marxist theory and spearheaded anti-factionalist campaigns among his peers. These activities not only reflected his commitment to party ideology but also demonstrated his early understanding of the importance of unity and loyalty within the WPK. Kim's education extended beyond the classroom, as he frequently accompanied his father to public events and political meetings. These experiences provided him with first-hand exposure to the workings of the party and the mechanics of power. Observing Kim Il-sung's leadership style and his ability to command loyalty undoubtedly influenced Kim Jong-il's approach to governance in later years. Extracurricular influences and foreign exposure. While North Korean propaganda emphasizes Kim's academic achievements and ideological dedication, other accounts suggest that he had interests and experiences that extended beyond the rigid confines of party doctrine. For instance, it is reported that Kim received English language instruction during his infrequent trips abroad, including a period in the early 1970s when he studied in Malta. Hosted by Maltese Prime Minister Dom Mintoff, these visits exposed Kim to Western culture and diplomacy, providing him with insights into international relations and the functioning of foreign governments. Kim's time in Malta, though brief and sporadic, is noteworthy because it contrasts sharply with the isolationist policies he later championed as a leader. His exposure to a different political and cultural environment may have informed his later diplomatic strategies, including his approach to dealing with Western powers. This duality, an understanding of the outside world juxtaposed with an unwavering commitment to North Korea's insular ideology, became a defining feature of his leadership. Family dynamics and early rivalries. Kim Jong-il's formative years were also shaped by the dynamics within his family, particularly the tensions that arose as Kim Il-sung's family grew. After the death of Kim Jong-suk, Kim Il-sung remarried and had another son, Kim Pyong-il. This addition to the family introduced an element of rivalry, as both sons were potential successors to their father's leadership. Kim Pyong-il, often described as charismatic and popular, was seen as a potential competitor to Kim Jong-il. However, Kim Jong-il's strategic acumen and proximity to Kim Il-sung ensured that he remained the favored heir. Reports suggest that Kim Jong-il frequently informed his father of any actions by Kim Pyong-il that could be interpreted as disloyal or ambitious, such as hosting parties where guests reportedly chanted slogans in his favor. These reports led to Kim Pyong-il being sidelined and eventually assigned to diplomatic posts in Europe, far from the centers of power in Pyongyang. This early rivalry underscores Kim Jong-il's ability to navigate complex political relationships and eliminate potential threats to his position. His actions during this period demonstrate a level of political sophistication that would later define his leadership style. Preparation for leadership. By the time Kim Jong-il graduated in 1960, he was already well versed in the ideological and political principles that underpinned North Korea's governance. His education, both formal and informal, equipped him with the tools needed to navigate the challenges of leadership. More importantly, his close association with Kim Il-sung and his active involvement in party activities positioned him as a natural successor to his father. Kim Jong-il's early political involvement was marked by a keen awareness of the importance of loyalty, discipline, and ideological purity. These values, instilled in him during his youth, would become central to his governance as he rose through the ranks of the WPK. His ability to blend intellectual rigor with strategic maneuvering allowed him to consolidate his position within the party and lay the groundwork for his eventual ascent to power. Part 3: Initial Career and Ascension to Power. Kim Jong-il's rise to power within the North Korean political hierarchy was a calculated process that required him to navigate the complex dynamics of loyalty, ideology, and internal party struggles. While he benefited immensely from his position as the eldest son of Kim Il-sung, his ascent was not without obstacles. Through a combination of strategic alliances, ideological purges, and a relentless focus on consolidating power, Kim Jong-il emerged as the unquestioned heir to his father's revolutionary legacy. Joining the Workers' Party of Korea, Kim Jong-il officially joined the Workers' Party of Korea, WPK, in July 1961, marking the formal beginning of his political career. His entry into the party was carefully orchestrated, as he was positioned to rise through its ranks as a protege of his father. At the time, the WPK was the central institution of power in North Korea, controlling all aspects of governance, military strategy, and ideological propagation. For Kim Jong-il, joining the party was not merely a formality but a critical step in establishing his presence within the political elite. Throughout the 1960s, Kim's responsibilities within the party gradually expanded. He took on roles in various departments, focusing particularly on propaganda and ideological education. These areas aligned closely with his interests, as they allowed him to shape the narrative around his father's leadership and begin building his own image as a dedicated revolutionary. This period also saw Kim deepen his understanding of the party's inner workings, particularly the importance of loyalty and the elimination of factionalism. The Kapsan faction incident, a turning point. One of the most significant events in Kim Jong-il's early political career was the Kapsan faction incident of 1967. This internal party struggle involved a group of senior officials, known as the Kapsan faction, who sought to challenge Kim Il-sung's authority. They criticized his policies and advocated for reforms that would reduce the concentration of power within the Kim family. For Kim Jong-il, this incident was both a threat and an opportunity. Kim played a prominent role in the investigation and purges that followed the exposure of the Kapsan faction. At just 26 years old, he was entrusted by his father with the task of identifying and eliminating dissent within the party. This assignment marked the first time Kim Jong-il was given official duties of significant consequence, signaling Kim Il-sung's growing confidence in his abilities. Kim's involvement in these purges showcased his ruthlessness and his understanding of the importance of ideological unity. He delivered his first major speech during the plenum that followed the purges, further establishing himself as a rising star within the party. His name began to appear in public documents for the first time, indicating that his role within the regime was no longer confined to behind-the-scenes activities. The Kapsan faction incident also allowed Kim Jong-il to align himself closely with his father's cult of personality. By participating in the suppression of dissent, Kim positioned himself as a loyal defender of Kim Il-sung's revolutionary vision. This alignment would become a cornerstone of his political strategy, as he sought to link his legitimacy to his father's legacy. Leadership in propaganda and cultural affairs. In the aftermath of the Kapsan faction incident, Kim Jong-il was tasked with revitalizing North Korea's cultural and propaganda apparatus. His leadership in this area marked a significant expansion of his influence, as he took control of the narratives that shaped public perception of the regime. One of Kim's first major initiatives was to reform the North Korean film industry. Recognizing the power of cinema as a tool for propaganda, he personally supervised the production of films that glorified his father's leadership and the revolutionary struggle. He is credited with authoring On the Art of the Cinema, a book that outlines his vision for the role of film in promoting party ideology. Under Kim's guidance, the film industry became a critical component of North Korea's propaganda machine, producing works that celebrated the Kim family's leadership and reinforced the principles of Juche. Kim's contributions to cultural affairs extended beyond cinema. He oversaw the production of operas, plays, and other cultural materials, all of which were designed to bolster the regime's image. These efforts not only intensified the cult of personality surrounding Kim Il-sung, but also laid the groundwork for Kim Jong-il's own mythos as a visionary leader. The succession question: as Kim Jong-il's influence within the WPK grew, the question of succession began to take center stage. By the early 1970s, Kim Il-sung was contemplating who would inherit his leadership, and Kim Jong-il emerged as the most likely candidate. However, his path to succession was not guaranteed, as several other figures within the regime posed potential challenges to his ascent. One of the most significant rivals was Kim Yong-ju, Kim Il-sung's younger brother. As a senior official within the party, Kim Yong-ju had significant influence and was once considered the natural successor. However, his position weakened over time due to his perceived mistakes and his inability to build a strong base of support. Another potential rival was Kim Pyong-il, Kim Jong-il's half-brother. Charismatic and popular, Kim Pyong-il was seen as a serious contender for leadership. However, Kim Jong-il skillfully neutralized this threat by reporting incidents that portrayed Kim Pyong-il as disloyal, such as hosting parties where guests reportedly chanted slogans in his favor. These reports led to Kim Pyong-il's reassignment to diplomatic posts in Europe, effectively removing him from the political arena. By the mid-1970s, Kim Jong-il's position as heir apparent was solidified. In 1974, the Central Committee of the WPK officially designated him as the successor to Kim Il-sung. This decision was publicly confirmed in 1977 when party documents began referring to him as the only heir to his father's leadership. The process of succession was further reinforced by Kim Jong-il's increasing control over the party's operations and his growing presence in public life. Consolidation of power: the Sixth Party Congress in October 1980 marked a turning point in Kim Jong-il's political career. By this time, he had assumed senior positions within the WPK, including roles in the Presidium, the Military Commission, and the party secretariat. His control over party operations was nearly complete, and his position as Kim Il-sung's successor was no longer in question. During this period, Kim adopted the title Dear Leader, a designation that highlighted his growing prominence and reinforced the narrative of his indispensability to the regime. The media hailed him as the fearless leader and the great successor to the revolutionary cause, echoing the language used to describe Kim Il-sung. These efforts to build a personality cult around Kim Jong-il were instrumental in ensuring a smooth transition of power. Preparing for leadership, by the late 1980s, Kim Jong-il was effectively running the day-to-day operations of the regime. He was deeply involved in decision-making across all sectors, from economic policy to military strategy. His leadership style, characterized by meticulous attention to detail and an emphasis on loyalty, set the tone for his eventual rule. Kim's ability to navigate the complexities of succession, eliminate potential rivals, and consolidate his authority within the WPK demonstrated his political acumen. By the time he officially assumed leadership following Kim Il-sung's death in 1994, Kim Jong-il was already the de facto leader of North Korea, fully prepared to inherit his father's mantle. Part 4: Leadership and Governance. Kim Jong-il's tenure as the leader of North Korea was a period of deepened autocracy, increased militarization, and intense propaganda. It was marked by significant domestic challenges, including economic collapse and widespread famine, as well as heightened tensions with the international community. Despite these difficulties, Kim managed to maintain absolute control over the state and further entrench the Kim family's rule, solidifying the dynasty that his father, Kim Il-sung, had established. The transition to supreme leadership. On July 8, 1994, Kim Il-sung, the founder of North Korea, died suddenly of a heart attack, leaving Kim Jong Il as his undisputed successor. This transition marked the beginning of a new chapter in North Korean history, as Kim Jong Il assumed leadership during a time of profound economic and political crisis. While Kim Il-sung's death was a significant blow to the nation, the groundwork for succession had been meticulously prepared over the preceding decades, ensuring a relatively smooth transfer of power. Kim initially adopted a cautious approach to leadership, allowing the country to mourn the passing of Kim Il-sung while consolidating his authority behind the scenes. He was officially named General Secretary of the Workers' Party of Korea, WPK, in 1997, and the National Defense Commission, which he chaired, was declared the highest office of the state. To honor his father's legacy, Kim Jong Il ensured that Kim Il-sung was posthumously named Eternal President, a symbolic move that both elevated his father's status and freed Kim Jong Il from direct comparison as a head of state. The Arduous March, famine and economic collapse. One of the defining crises of Kim Jong Il's early leadership was the famine of the 1990s, referred to in North Korea as the Arduous March. This catastrophic period, caused by a combination of natural disasters, economic mismanagement, and the collapse of the Soviet Union, resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of North Koreans. The exact toll remains uncertain due to the regime's secrecy, but the famine left a profound scar on the nation. Kim's response to the famine was shaped by his military-first, Sungun, policy, which prioritized the needs of the armed forces over those of the civilian population. Food and resources were directed toward the military and the ruling elite, leaving ordinary citizens to endure the brunt of the crisis. The famine also led to the rise of informal markets, as desperate North Koreans turned to bartering and smuggling to survive. While international aid organizations eventually intervened, their efforts were tightly controlled by the regime, which feared foreign influence and sought to use aid distribution as a means of reinforcing loyalty. Despite the humanitarian crisis, Kim remained steadfast in his commitment to just self-reliance, rejecting systemic reforms that might undermine the regime's ideological foundation. The Sungun policy and military dominance. Kim Jong Il's Sungun policy became the cornerstone of his governance. Introduced as a response to the challenges of the 1990s, Sungun elevated the military to a central position in North Korean society. The Korean People's Army, KPA, was not only the primary recipient of state resources but also a key player in political decision-making, reflecting Kim's belief that military strength was essential for the survival of the regime. Under Sungun, the military became the dominant institution in North Korea, enjoying privileges and influence that extended far beyond its traditional role. This militarization of society had profound implications for domestic policy, as resources were diverted from civilian sectors to support the armed forces. The policy also shaped North Korea's foreign relations, as Kim pursued a strategy of brinkmanship that relied on the threat of military force to extract concessions from the international community. The nuclear ambitions. One of the most controversial aspects of Kim Jong Il's leadership was his commitment to developing North Korea's nuclear weapons program. This effort began under Kim Il-sung but accelerated significantly during Kim Jong Il's tenure. In 1994, North Korea and the United States signed the agreed framework, which aimed to freeze the country's nuclear program in exchange for aid and the construction of light water reactors. However, the agreement eventually collapsed, and North Korea resumed its pursuit of nuclear weapons. In 2006, North Korea conducted its first nuclear test, a watershed moment that underscored the regime's determination to establish itself as a nuclear power. The test drew widespread condemnation and led to increased sanctions, further isolating the country from the international community. Despite the economic and diplomatic costs, Kim viewed the nuclear program as essential for deterring external threats and ensuring the regime's survival. Economic policies and limited reforms. Economically, Kim Jong Il's leadership was marked by stagnation and inefficiency. The state's commitment to central planning and Juche ideology left little room for innovation or market-driven growth. However, the famine of the 1990s forced the regime to tolerate limited economic activity outside the official system, leading to the emergence of informal markets. In the early 2000s, Kim introduced a series of modest economic reforms, including the establishment of special economic zones and the legalization of some private trade. These measures provided temporary relief, but were insufficient to address the underlying structural issues facing the economy. Moreover, the regime's fear of losing control prevented the implementation of broader reforms, leaving the country heavily reliant on foreign aid and illicit activities, such as smuggling and counterfeit currency production, to sustain itself. One of the most disastrous economic policies of Kim's tenure was the 2009 currency revaluation, which aimed to curb inflation and reassert state control over the economy. The move wiped out the savings of ordinary citizens and led to widespread unrest, forcing the regime to reverse some of the changes. This episode highlighted the fragility of North Korea's economy and the limitations of Kim's approach to governance. Cult of personality and propaganda. Central to Kim Jong Il's leadership was the continuation and expansion of the cult of personality established by his father. State propaganda portrayed Kim as an infallible leader, attributing to him extraordinary abilities and accomplishments. From claims that he composed operas and directed films to stories of his military genius, the regime constructed an image of Kim as a leader of unparalleled wisdom and talent. Kim's birthday, February 16, was declared a national holiday known as the Day of the Shining Star, and mass celebrations were held to honor his leadership. Monuments, songs, and other cultural artifacts were created to glorify him, reinforcing his centrality to the nation's identity. This personality cult not only bolstered Kim's authority but also served as a tool for social control, fostering loyalty and suppressing dissent. Foreign relations and strategic engagement. Kim Jong Il's approach to foreign relations was characterized by a combination of isolationism and strategic engagement. While the regime maintained its rhetoric of self-reliance, it also recognized the need for diplomacy to secure aid and manage tensions. The Sunshine Policy implemented by South Korean President Kim Dae-jung in the late 1990s led to a temporary thaw in inter-Korean relations. The 2000 Inter-Korean Summit in Pyongyang, where Kim met Kim Dae-jung, was a historic event that raised hopes for reconciliation. However, progress was limited, as North Korea's nuclear ambitions and provocations continued to undermine trust. Kim also engaged with China and Russia, securing economic and political support from these traditional allies. His visits to these countries were carefully choreographed, showcasing the regime's resilience while emphasizing its strategic importance in regional geopolitics. Part 5, Death and Legacy. Kim Jong Il's death on December 17, 2011, brought an end to a leadership defined by its mix of rigid control, profound international controversy, and the relentless continuation of his father Kim Il-sung's revolutionary ideology. His legacy, marked by both achievements and atrocities, remains one of the most polarizing in modern history. While he maintained the stability of the North Korean regime and ensured the survival of the Kim dynasty, his governance was characterized by systemic oppression, strategic brinkmanship, and policies that often placed the survival of the regime above the welfare of its people. The issue of abductions of South Koreans and Japanese by North Korea. One of the most internationally contentious and morally reprehensible policies associated with Kim Jong Il's leadership was North Korea's abduction of citizens from other countries, including South Korea and Japan. These acts, which began in the 1950s and continued through the 1980s, were carried out with the aim of advancing the regime's strategic, military, and propaganda objectives. The scale, motives, and long-term consequences of these abductions reflect not only the regime's disregard for international norms but also Kim Jong Il's obsession with maintaining control through unconventional means. South Korean abductions. The abduction of South Korean citizens was a long-standing policy under both Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong Il, aimed at destabilizing South Korea, gathering intelligence, and creating a pool of skilled individuals to serve the North Korean regime. These operations were often conducted by the North Korean military and intelligence agencies, targeting fishermen, intellectuals, and even students. Estimates suggest that over 3,800 South Koreans were abducted or forcibly taken to North Korea during Kim Jong-il's tenure alone. Many South Koreans abducted during this period were fishermen who were captured during North Korean raids in the Yellow Sea. These individuals were often transported to North Korea, where they were coerced into labor or indoctrinated into the regime's ideology. The North Korean government used these captives to extract information about South Korean society, economy, and military strategy, often under duress or through forced collaboration. In addition to fishermen, the regime specifically targeted South Korean intellectuals, engineers, and other professionals who could contribute to North Korea's technological and propaganda efforts. Some abductees were forced to teach South Korean customs, dialects, and culture to North Korean spies in preparation for covert operations against the South. This strategic use of abductees highlights the regime's reliance on unorthodox and often brutal methods to achieve its objectives. The families of abducted South Koreans have long sought justice and answers, but North Korea has consistently denied responsibility or refused to provide credible information about their fate. International pressure, particularly from the United Nations and human rights organizations, has repeatedly called for accountability, but the regime has resisted all efforts to address this issue transparently. For the families of the abductees, Kim Jong-il's regime represents an enduring source of trauma, characterized by silence, denial, and impunity. The Japanese abductions. The abduction of Japanese citizens, although smaller in scale compared to South Korean cases, became a high-profile international issue and a significant strain on Japan-North Korea relations. Between the late 1970s and early 1980s, at least 17 Japanese citizens were kidnapped by North Korean agents. These individuals were taken from Japanese coastal towns and urban centers, often in daring operations involving subterfuge and coercion. The motives behind the abduction of Japanese citizens were multifaceted. One of the primary objectives was to use these individuals to train North Korean spies. Abductees were forced to teach Japanese language, customs, and societal behaviors to North Korean operatives who were being prepared for covert missions in Japan. Some were used to forge documents, while others were exploited for propaganda purposes, creating materials that portrayed Japan in a negative light to reinforce the regime's ideological narratives. The abduction of Japanese citizens gained international attention due to persistent activism by their families and pressure from the Japanese government. For decades, North Korea denied any involvement in these incidents, dismissing accusations as baseless propaganda by hostile forces. However, in a rare move, Kim Jong-il publicly acknowledged the abductions during a 2002 summit with Japanese Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi. This admission marked a significant moment, as it was one of the few instances where North Korea openly admitted to carrying out such acts. During the summit, Kim claimed that the abductions were the work of rogue elements within the regime and expressed regret for their actions. He stated that several of the abductees had died, either due to accidents or natural causes, and allowed 5 of the survivors to return to Japan. While this gesture provided some closure to the families of the 5 returnees, it left many unanswered questions about the fate of the other abductees. North Korea's explanation, which included vague and unverifiable accounts of their deaths, was met with widespread skepticism. The Japanese government, supported by international human rights organizations, has continued to demand accountability and transparency regarding the remaining abductees. However, North Korea has consistently resisted further cooperation, citing the issue as resolved. This lack of resolution has fueled public outrage in Japan, with many viewing Kim Jong Il's admission as a calculated move to ease international pressure rather than a genuine act of contrition. Final years and death. As Kim Jong Il approached the final years of his life, signs of physical decline began to emerge, reflecting the toll of decades spent in power. Reports of a stroke in 2008 raised questions about the stability of his leadership and the future of North Korea. Despite this, Kim remained active in public appearances, albeit less frequently, and continued to oversee state affairs with characteristic detail and intensity. His later years were marked by a mix of personal health struggles, ongoing challenges within the country, and a determined effort to secure a smooth transition of power to his youngest son, Kim Jong-un. Health issues and speculation. Kim Jong-il's health problems first became apparent to the international community when he failed to appear at a military parade commemorating North Korea's 60th anniversary in 2008. Rumors of a stroke or other debilitating condition quickly circulated, fueled by reports from defectors, foreign intelligence agencies, and occasional leaks from within North Korea. These reports suggested that Kim was undergoing medical treatment, including visits from foreign doctors, and that his mobility and speech had been significantly affected. Despite his health struggles, Kim continued to project an image of strength and control. State media frequently broadcast images of him visiting factories, military units, and farms, often accompanied by high-ranking officials and members of his family. These appearances were carefully choreographed to reassure the North Korean people and the international community that he remained firmly in command. Succession planning. In his later years, Kim Jong-il focused intensely on preparing Kim Jong-un to succeed him. Unlike Kim Jong-il, who had been groomed for decades as his father's heir, Kim Jong-un's rise was rapid and relatively secretive. By 2010, he had been promoted to several senior positions within the Workers' Party of Korea, WPK, and the military, signaling his status as the designated successor. Kim's efforts to secure a smooth transition reflected his understanding of the importance of continuity in maintaining the regime's stability. He worked to consolidate Kim Jong-un's authority by introducing him to key members of the party and the military and ensuring that propaganda materials emphasized the younger Kim's connection to the revolutionary legacy of Kim Il-sung. This preparation, while rushed, proved effective in securing Kim Jong-un's position following Kim Jong-il's death. Death and national mourning. On December 17, 2011, Kim Jong-il died of a heart attack while traveling on his private train. The announcement of his death was accompanied by dramatic propaganda, with state media claiming that supernatural phenomena, such as glowing skies and cracks in the ice on Mount Paektu, heralded his passing. These elements were designed to reinforce the mythology surrounding the Kim family and to present Kim Jong-il as a leader whose significance transcended the mortal realm. The nation entered a period of intense mourning, with state-organized ceremonies and mass displays of grief in Pyongyang and other cities. Kim's body was embalmed and placed in the Kumsusan Memorial Palace, alongside his father, Kim Il-sung. The regime declared him the Eternal General Secretary of the Workers' Party of Korea and the Eternal Chairman of the National Defense Commission, ensuring that his legacy would remain enshrined in North Korea's ideology. The transition to Kim Jong-un's leadership was swift and largely uncontested, a testament to the groundwork laid by Kim Jong-il. The younger Kim was hailed as the great successor, and his ascension marked the continuation of the Kim dynasty, underscoring the dynastic nature of North Korean politics. Kim Jong-il's legacy. Kim Jong-il's legacy is deeply divisive, characterized by a mix of continuity, repression, and strategic maneuvering that left an indelible mark on North Korea and the world. His leadership ensured the survival of the regime during a period of profound challenges, but it also entrenched systemic issues that continue to define North Korea today. Domestic achievements and failures. Domestically, Kim Jong-il's rule was defined by the military-first, sun-gun policy, which prioritized the armed forces as the cornerstone of the regime. This policy successfully secured the loyalty of the military and reinforced the state's stability, but it came at the cost of widespread poverty and suffering among the civilian population. The famine of the 1990s, known as the Arduous March, remains one of the darkest periods in North Korean history, with millions dying due to starvation and the regime's refusal to seek meaningful reforms or foreign assistance. Economically, Kim's tenure was marked by stagnation and inefficiency. While limited market reforms in the 2000s allowed for the emergence of informal markets and small-scale trade, these measures were insufficient to address the structural problems facing the economy. The 2009 currency revaluation, intended to curb inflation and reassert state control, instead caused chaos and further eroded public trust in the regime. Foreign relations and nuclear legacy. Jong Il's approach to foreign relations was defined by a mix of brinkmanship and strategic engagement. His pursuit of nuclear weapons, culminating in North Korea's first nuclear test in 2006, cemented the country's status as a nuclear power but also deepened its isolation and led to increased sanctions. Despite these tensions, Kim demonstrated a willingness to engage diplomatically when it suited the regime's interests, as seen in his meetings with South Korean leaders during the Sunshine Policy era and his efforts to secure aid from China and Russia. The nuclear program remains one of Kim's most enduring legacies, shaping North Korea's geopolitical strategy and its relations with the international community. While it provided a deterrent against external threats, it also made North Korea a pariah state, with few allies and limited access to global markets. Evaluation of Kim Jong Il. Evaluating Kim Jong Il's leadership requires balancing the internal and external dimensions of his rule, as well as the deeply polarized perspectives that surround his legacy. Strengths and strategic acumen. Kim's ability to maintain the regime's stability in the face of immense challenges reflects his political skill and strategic acumen. He successfully navigated the transition of power following Kim Il-sung's death, consolidated his authority within the party and military, and ensured the continuation of the Kim dynasty. His use of propaganda and the cult of personality demonstrated a deep understanding of the mechanisms of authoritarian control, allowing him to command loyalty and suppress dissent effectively. Criticism and human rights violations. However, these achievements came at a tremendous cost. Kim's leadership was marked by widespread human rights abuses, including the operation of political prison camps, severe restrictions on freedom of movement and expression, and systemic repression of dissent. The famine of the 1990s, exacerbated by the regime's policies, remains a stark indictment of his leadership, highlighting the prioritization of ideology and control over the well-being of the population. Global perception. Internationally, Kim Jong Il is often viewed as a dictator who perpetuated a regime of oppression and instability. His nuclear ambitions and acts of provocation, such as the abductions of foreign citizens, reinforced the perception of North Korea as a rogue state. At the same time, his willingness to engage in diplomacy when it served the regime's interests demonstrated a pragmatic side that often goes overlooked. Conclusion. Kim Jong Il's life and leadership encapsulate the complexities of modern North Korea. A nation defined by its defiance of external pressures, its reliance on repression and propaganda, and its ability to survive against the odds. His legacy is one of profound contradictions, marked by both strategic successes and devastating failures. As North Korea continues under Kim Jong-un's leadership, the impact of Kim Jong-il's policies remains deeply embedded in the nation's political and social fabric, shaping its trajectory for years to come.